coverage of the general election here in Wyoming. We have got a fantastic night planned for all of you. Polls closed about an hour ago, but we've got a great selection of panelists here and a number of wonderful guests that are going to come on. We're going to be able to unpack the things that are happening both here in Wyoming and in other races that are going to affect us here in Wyoming. So real quickly, I want to run through our amazing panelists who most of them were with us last time for our primary election coverage. We've got Liz Brimmer. Wave, Liz. Liz is a Wyoming communications businesswoman, former journalist, and former chief of staff to the late Senator Craig Thomas. She's been involved in every Wyoming election cycle in one way or the other for decades. She's Rawlins born, Cheyenne raised. So glad to have Liz with us. Cassie Craven. Wave, Cassie. Cassie is the founding partner of Longhorn Law, LLC, political strategy firm Longhorn Ventures, LLC. She is a former prosecutor, judicial clerk, career litigator. She also lobbies. Legislative drafting and testimony is also in her wheelhouse. Elections, political strategies. She's a policy nerd. I like this, a policy nerd. Tom Lubnow, wave Tom up there in the corner. Tom Lubnow has been taking care of his legal clients in Gillette for 40 years. He served 10 years in the Wyoming legislature, 21 years on the Campbell County Fire Department. I think that's awesome. And he's also a columnist for Cowboy State Daily. Rod Miller. There he is. All right. Rod Miller, raised on a ranch in Carbon County. He served as a public lands expert for both Governor Ed Herschler and Governor Mike Sullivan, who we will hear from later tonight. He's had a varied career in government and the private sector as well, now semi-retired, also a columnist for Cowboy State Daily. Bill Snippens, speaking of columnists, wave Bill. Bill has been a journalist in Wyoming for 54 years. He was recently named the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award by the National Newspaper Association. He and his wife have owned more than 20 newspapers and magazines in the state. Just amazing body of work for us here in Wyoming. Paul Ulrich is the newest member of our panel. Hello, Paul Ulrich. He grew up in Park County. He's got deep roots in Kemmerer, resides in Pinedale. He's an 18-year veteran of the oil and gas exploration and production industry. He's currently serves as Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs at Jonah Energy. So he's got wonderful conservation and great experience in those things. Last but not least, Center Square, Rob Wallace. Hello, Rob Wallace. Native of Evanston, served as the Assistant Secretary for Fish and Wildlife and Parks at the U.S. Department of the Interior until January of 2021. National Park Service, he oversaw that as well. Also served as Chief of Staff to U.S. Senator Malcolm Wallop and Chief of Staff to Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer. We are so grateful to have all of you. We've got so much to talk about tonight. We're going to go straight to Leo Wolfson, who is our politics reporter at Cowboy State Daily. And Leo's going to line us out for some of the races that we're going to be watching tonight. So, Leo, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thanks, Wendy. It's a pleasure to be on here and an honor to be surrounded by so many esteemed people in this panel tonight. We got 5 big races that we're looking at for the Wyoming legislature tonight. But before I get into that, obviously everyone's taking a look at the presidential race tonight. We'll make no illusions that that's a huge marquee. But the big drama in Wyoming will be really these 5 races, because I think it's almost pretty much a foregone conclusion that former President Donald Trump is going to win Wyoming. I think very few people would dispute that. So we're really concentrating on these 5 key races that really will be an important barometer for what the Wyoming House looks like heading into the next session. And what that involves basically is that the Democrats have about 5 races they could theoretically win tonight. I wouldn't necessarily expect them to win all 5, but they have about 5 opportunities that we've kind of outlined tonight. And those will, depending on how much success or not that they have, will also determine how much success or how much power the Wyoming Freedom Caucus candidates will have headed into the next session. If the Democrats have a surprisingly successful night, the Freedom Caucus might be able to have might not have quite as much voting power as they would like otherwise. The Freedom Caucus is pretty much poised to take over the House no matter what, but these races will be really critical to watch as far as the dynamic of the legislature and whether Democrats gain seats for the first time since 2014. The big races that we're going to be looking at are in House District 41 in Cheyenne. That's between Republican Gary Brown and Democratic challenger Jen Solis. In House District 11 in Cheyenne as well. That's between Democrat Sarah Burlingame and fellow challenger Jacob Wasserberger, a Republican. Both those candidates are challengers, not incumbents. In House District 45 in Laramie, we have Democrat incumbent Carly Provenza. She's going up against challenger Paul Crouch. Over in Laramie as well, in House District 14, we have Democratic incumbent Representative Trey Sherwood. She's going against Republican challenger Joe Gistosi. And then over in central Wyoming, in Fremont County, in House District 33, we have Republican incumbent Representative Sarah Penn going up against Democratic challenger Ivan Posey. And of these five races, we believe that at least these are reasonably competitive races that either person could reasonably win tonight.
That's great. Leo, thank you so much. You've given us a lot of information in a very short period of time. Thank you very much. One person I did not introduce, I just realized as we are going through this panel, is our editor, Jimmy Orr. Jimmy, raise your hand, wave. We're glad to have you on this panel as well. Jimmy is going to be kind of making sure that everything flows well, and I'm very grateful to have him overseeing all of this. I'm going to just kind of start until we get our first guest on. I want to go through and just kind of ask people, what are you looking at, and really what are your expectations of this night and what we're looking at? We're going to start up here at the top with Tom Lubnow. Tom, what are your thoughts on the races that we've got looking? What do you think is the impact to Wyoming for the things that could happen with this election?
Well, with the five races that we have coming up, there's a power shift that's possible. In Alaska, typically, if the disaffected liberal Republicans or more liberal Republicans don't like the leadership slate that the very conservative Alaska Republicans have, they can work an agreement with the Democrats to take over the party. And they've done that in the past by promising some prime seats as committee chairs. They can, because to vote for speaker, everybody gets to vote, not just the caucus. And so there can be some horse trading. I don't anticipate that to happen this time through, but there's a possibility. The character of the legislature, I think, is really, really important, and seeing how that plays out is going to be the most important thing that we'll see.
Very good. Tom, thank you so much. I want to welcome Representative Harriet Hageman to our panel tonight as a guest. We're so glad to have you here, Representative Hageman. Congratulations, because I think that Cowboy State Daily has actually called your race.
I think so. And Tom, I sure didn't mean to interrupt you. I just clicked on the link and here I am. But it's wonderful to be with you. And yes, you've called the race. I don't know all the numbers yet, but I'm sure that we'll be getting those the next hour or so.
Very good. We wanted to ask you, Representative Hageman, what are your big thoughts going into tonight? I mean, this has been such a huge buildup. What are your thoughts as to the implications for Wyoming from all of the activities in this election?
Well, this election is so incredibly important for the state of Wyoming, simply because we're one of the largest energy producers in the nation. And since the moment that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took office, they have had a war on domestic energy production. They have blocked pipelines. They have pursued the 30 by 30 policy, whether they want to admit it or not. And I know that she's attempted to do a dance around the issue. She wants to ban fracking. The Buffalo RMP came out about 4 months ago, and they're going to, the BLM is moving forward with blocking all coal mining in the Powder River Basin by 2041. Why that's so significant is some people would say, well, that's 15 years down the road. Surely we can fix it between now and then. But I've talked to our coal companies. They need to be doing their permitting over the next year, 2 years, 3 years in order to be able to expand their operations to actually be operating in 2041. So the decisions that are being made by the Biden-Harris administration, and if Kamala Harris were to win, what she would continue to pursue would be to be blocking the mining of 40% of America's coal. So they have just been absolutely destructive for, if you're interested in protecting affordable and reliable energy. And I would assume that if she is elected to this position, she is going to double down, in part because I think that they will see this as ratification of these horrific policies that we have seen over the last 3.5 years.
I'd like to ask Rod Miller, or actually, yeah, let's go ahead with Rod. Rod, what are your thoughts on the energy? Public lands was a big focus for you when you were in government service. What are your thoughts on the things that Representative Hageman has just said?
Yeah, the representative is correct, because the executive branch attitude in America now is much different than it was when I was working in the governor's office. There was no war on energy, and coal leasing happened apace. They would have regular coal leases, and significant acreage would be snapped up, and the coal companies would have time to plan the development or vis-a-vis the permitting. It's a different atmosphere today, but I personally will not place all the onus of diminished coal production in Wyoming on the federal government. The market has a lot to do with that.
Okay.
Coal must compete in the energy marketplace with a number of other energy sources today that it didn't have to do 35 years ago. So, but bottom line is, the coal patch, if neither the executive branch nor the market changed, the coal patch in Wyoming will shrink.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rod. Representative Hageman, tell us a little bit about some of the other things that you're looking at and the other implications for Wyoming from this election cycle.
So again, I'm cautiously optimistic that Donald Trump is going to win tonight. He's obviously ahead in the Electoral College, and I think that we're winning in those states where everyone expected us to win. And I also think we're going to pick up, say, North Carolina and Georgia this time. Wisconsin's awfully close. I'm not quite sure which counties are still out in those states, but I anticipate we're going to have a win there. And I think that again, there's going to be a completely different attitude in Washington, D.C. from the regulatory standpoint, which is the area that I worked in as an attorney for the last 25 years. I would agree with Rod that there is a different market now than there was 35 years ago, but in large part that's because the federal government has put its thumb on the scale of unreliable and inefficient energy resources, and as a result, it's made it very difficult for coal to compete. If wind and solar had to actually compete in a fair market, I don't think that you would have seen the reduction in the demand for our coal. Our coal is clean burning, it's efficient. We cannot produce all of really any of the things that we need in a civilized society without either coal or oil and gas. So it's incredibly important, not only now, but in the future. In terms of what I want to work on is I want to continue to work to address the issues associated with the federal overreach. When you look at the Buffalo RMP and you look at the Rock Springs RMP, you look at the catastrophic forest fires that we've had this year, not all of them on Forest Service land, but a number of them. And what you really have is you have a lot of really bad policies coming out of Washington, D.C. The folks that work here in Wyoming, our federal employees, I think that they work extremely hard. I went up and for example, toured the fire outside of Sheridan, and I had spent about 8 hours with the chief of the Forest Service up there, incredibly impressed with who he is, what he does, how he thinks, what he wants to do. But he will tell you, as so many of our other federal employees, their hands are completely tied by bad policies out of Washington, D.C. One of the things that we've seen over the last 25 years, especially, is the outcome or the results of the Clinton roadless rule. And a lot of people don't realize that you need to tie these things back to what Bill Clinton did on his way out of office when he denied access, management, and use to 58.5 million acres of National Forest Service lands. The intervening 25 years, we've seen the consequences of that with the fires, with the beetle outbreak, with the failure to properly manage manage that resource. So I will continue working on the Natural Resource Committee, trying to address the issues that are so important in Wyoming in terms of land use, water use, that sort of thing, wildlife management. And then also on judiciary, I will continue to work on the First Amendment issues. I will continue to hopefully push back against the weaponization of the federal government. And I will continue my quest at actually returning us to our constitutional foundation of separation of powers, where the legislative branch legislates, the executive branch only carries out that legislation, and the judiciary interprets the law.
Thank you very much. Jimmy Orr, you had a question for Representative Hageman.
Hey, Representative Hageman, thanks for joining us. I just want you to know we called your race at 7 o'clock in 1 second.
That's really funny.
So congratulations on that. And are you gonna hold the House?
I think that we are. It's looking tonight like things are pretty good. I have, over the last couple of days, looked at a variety of prognostications, I guess you could say. The most negative was the one that had me the most concerned, but it's also someone who has voiced incredible opposition to Republicans this year. So I think that his polling is called into question simply because his behavior has been so incredibly one-sided. So, we'll see what happens. I think we'll lose some of the seats we have. I'm potentially going to be losing some friends, but hopefully I'm going to be gaining some friends as well. I think we're doing pretty good. We're hanging in there, and I think over the next 2 hours we're going to have a much better idea if we hold the House.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Representative Hageman. We're so glad that you were able to join us tonight. I know it's been a busy night. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Great to visit with all of you.
Glad to see you. Thank you. I see that we've been joined by former Governor Mike Sullivan, and he's joining us right now. We're so glad to see him. He was a guest on our August primary night as well. Hello there, sir. How are you this fine evening?
Very good. Very good, Wendy. How are you?
We're doing great.
Nice to be with you again.
Well, we're so glad to see you. We've got a wonderful panel of people who have been watching the election results, just like you. You are no stranger to watching for election results, and you know what a night like tonight feels like. What are your thoughts about what's unfolding today?
Well, my thoughts are that I came on this program so I could find out what was going on, because I can't tell. The only excitement I've had tonight is every time they announced a poll was closing. That seemed really exciting to all of the announcers.
That seems to be an issue right now. That is, the polls have been so busy all throughout Wyoming, and that's something that we've certainly been watching at Cowboy State Daily. Bill Sniffen, I know you have been you've been watching these elections for decades, and I'm wondering if
more than that.
Okay.
More than decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been around 102 years. Surely.
Surely. Absolutely. Governor Sullivan, I'm questioning your thoughts on this, the national scene, and what the national scene and the potential results for tonight mean for Wyoming. You were a governor here for 2 terms. You were an ambassador to Ireland. You have been watching Wyoming both from the inside and from the outside. And what do you see that we could be concerned about, or that we can be hopeful for when we're looking at this election?
Well, at this stage, it's hard for me to say, except I think I'd insert probably a partisan comment that I would be concerned that we may end up with a lack of leadership that exhibits the strong characteristics of morality and leadership that we've had over the years, and that we have both internationally and nationally. And that would be, if it goes against what I view as my biases, then I would be concerned about where we are in our leadership in our country and with our allies, and other countries. Anybody that's served over outside of the country knows that the United States, whether they agree with our positions or not, they expect us to be leaders, and they expect us to be leaders with moral turpitude.
Thank you so much for those thoughts. I think that's very astute. I've got a question. I'm going to ask Cassie Craven to answer to that, or to toss in your thoughts on that, because this is something that I think that you have strong feelings about.
Right, Wendy. I think at a national level,
Oh, hello, Cassie.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good.
I think at a national level, this race will be very close. And I think my last column really touched on that. I think the sense of freedom and leadership vary differently. And I think that this race is an opportunity for the voters to express what they think about that. I think that at this point, the lines have been drawn, so to speak. One thing I've found interesting at a federal level is that the GOP has sort of become the big tent that we imagine it to be. You've seen Tulsi Gabbard and some others cross over to the Republican Party. So I think it's a very interesting time that we find ourselves to be a part of.
Well, I'm not sure I could take any exception to what you say. It's an interesting time. It's got generated lots of enthusiasm, and it almost appears to me like the parties have basically flipped.
In what way, sir? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, just as was said, now the Republican Party is trying to be the party of the common man and the working man, and the Democratic finds itself being associated with some areas of the economic scale that they haven't been associated with in the past. And it's just it's a strange circumstance that's happened to us. Democrats always said we were the Big Ten. Now you hear Cassie saying they're the Big Ten.
That's excellent observation. Very
good. And the only thing I would say about, and I said this in our previous session about the Republicans, I'm not sure where they are. I'm not sure I know where the Republicans are, because it seems like two parties, certainly at least locally.
Okay. And that has certainly been something that's been an observation. Tom, you've got a comment on this.
Hi, Governor.
Hi, Tom.
I just returned from upstate New York, where I was visiting my son. And it's interesting, the media vacuum that we live in Wyoming. If you talk about, it was in Elise Stefanik's district, which is a district in northern New York. And the advertising and the media there was far different than what we see in Wyoming. And so I wonder if people in Wyoming aren't getting the same information that people in the rest of the country are getting. And as a result, our decision-making is skewed. And Governor, you've seen national and international points of view on that. And I've always been a student of what the media provides to people, and our ability to pick media sources, and wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, the only thing I would say is I think anytime you go outside of the state or outside of the country, you get a much different perspective, and that comes from a lot of different things. Certainly it comes from the small nature of our population. It comes from the natural resource nature of our population, the rural nature of our population. So whether it's upstate New York or New York City, the emphasis and the reporting is going to be much different, and a much different perspective. That's not to say that's good or bad,
but it's certainly different. Yes, Liz Brimmer, I want to ask you to chime in on this. What are your thoughts on this line of thinking?
Well, I think so many things in any national election or even a statewide election come down to the economy. People vote, the common denominator is how people are feeling about their place in the economy, their place in their own, they look at their own bank account, their own family household, and these are the things that are motivators. So the shifting sands between different parties, to me as a message person, those are opportunities for message, or those are failures of message. One of the things that you asked early on at the beginning is, in this election in Wyoming, for example, what am I trying to pay attention to or trying to learn from? And it is certainly the motivation of the explanation for turnout. If you look at the primary just this year compared to, just early voting reports for this general election, it's astounding. And the motive to get out, the motive to, I have people I know and are related to in Cheyenne that, stood in the cold for 45 minutes just trying to vote, bitter cold. Highly motivated to get to the time that they could put in their ballot no matter what, even through harsh weather. The motive of what has reached people as the economic message, or the message that in the next 4 years or 2 years, whichever the race, what's going to put them in a better spot. I think that's, whether it's a national election or a state election, it really is keenly related to anything economic. And certainly in these last few years, the spike in inflation, the feeling of unsettling in the world, there's a lot of reasons that people in the general election are going to go out. I think the 4 or 5 Democrat races that we're all watching tonight are very interesting. And I don't mean to super jump ahead, but since there's a former governor and former ambassador on the line, it's fun to talk. The race that I think are going to be fascinating are going to be the 5 statewide elected races in 2026, and we've already seen some positioning for that. But to think about the turnout levels in a presidential year in this today, it's going to set the benchmark for what that race in August 2026 needs to be.
Very good. Liz, thank you for that. Governor Sullivan, just real quickly, what are you looking at from your seat now that you're retired? What are your concerns for maybe some of the local topics and the local issues on that lower level, not necessarily the national level, but just as a citizen of Wyoming, what are your hopes for our state going forward?
Well, I'm like anybody else in Wyoming who's been in Wyoming long, and that is a concern about the diversification of our economy and what happens to fossil fuels and coal, and whether we can convince the country and continue to convince the country that that's going to be a necessary part of our overall energy for some time. I think part of the turnout, at least much of the excitement around here, and it sounds to me like most of the other counties, is the school board. And that's those results and those where those issues go is going to be should be, I think, of concern to all of us. And then once the legislature convenes, there are going to be a whole number of issues. Let me throw a thought in, and then my time will be up and I can run. And maybe it'll be an opportunity for consideration. But I'm really, really disappointed in the beating that Liz Cheney has taken. And I'm disappointed because I'm convinced that her position is one of principle. And when you, even here in her home state, where she's done all of us, and I'm not one of her political partners, but she's done a lot for the state. She gets a comment from our now presidential candidate, and maybe tomorrow our president, who talks about, with other adjectives that aren't worth repeating, that she couldn't stand in front of 9 guns pointed at her face. And that only suggests a firing squad. And then his staff had him come around and say, no, I'm talking about war. I'm not talking about anything else. And yet we're willing to stomach it and not, in my view, come to her defense. She is acting out of principle. There ought to be a lot more people in this country acting out of principle and not out of concern about power or position or money. And I just think it's a shame that we haven't been able to set that kind of thing aside and say, okay, I understand. This may be a matter of principle, and that wouldn't be the way I'd handle it. I'm not saying that wouldn't be the way I'd handle it, but if I'm somebody else, that wouldn't be the way I'd handle it. But I'm not going to try to bayonet her because of her position. And that wouldn't be the way I'd handle it.
Thank you very much for that. I want to go to Bill Sniffen. Bill, what are your thoughts on that?
But I'm not going to.
Am I on? Okay, I have way too much respect for Mike Sullivan to
Thank you very much for
argue with him on that. But Liz Cheney, I don't believe it was that big a principle deal, but she gave up all that clout for Wyoming, and 240 other Republican congressmen and senators didn't vote to impeach Trump. I mean, I'm sorry.
You just made my point. 240 didn't.
Yeah, well, that's fairly substantial, 10 to 240 to 10. But Mike, you and I are going to have to drink Little Robin Redbreast and that stuff.
As it should be. That's the way it should be. The differences between friends.
Bill and I, that's the part we're missing. You know, you can't do these things anymore if you want to maintain your job in one hand, or if you want to do this in the other. So principle doesn't seem to have much position.
Governor Sullivan, we're so grateful that you were able to come on today and give us your thoughts, and we're going to sit with those thoughts. And thank you very much for bringing them on to us.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to more of you.
We're glad that we got you for as long as we did. Thank you, sir, so much.
Now I'll come back and just watch you go.
Okay, all right, it's a deal.
And there's Miller. I didn't even get to say hello to him.
Hey, Governor.
You know, we have
Thanks.
had just this excellent conversation so far, and we've got so many great guests. I want to be able to get everybody else in here as well. We've got Pete Williams in the wings here that's waiting to come on, but before he does, I want to go to Paul Ulrich, because Paul, your job is in energy, and I want to go to something that Governor Sullivan was talking about the diversification of the energy industry. And this is right in your wheelhouse. Paul, what are your thoughts on the things that he was saying?
Well, I absolutely agree with the governor that we need to continue to look for opportunity to diversify. The challenge we have today, and we all understand this, and Governor, you understand this better than most, is our tax code is predicated on oil and gas and coal development in large part. Tom, you understand this too. It's great to bring a call center in. It's great to be, to bring in some other industry that is not in direct support of oil and gas or coal. But eventually, their burden based on our tax code outweighs the revenue they bring in. And so when we talk about diversification, we need to talk about diversifying our oil and our gas and our coal industries first and foremost, based on how we have chosen to govern and tax ourselves in the state of Wyoming. So we need to look at expanding markets for natural gas. We need to take a hard look at the fact that we produce some of the cleanest gas in the country and perhaps the world. And how can we, one, convince domestic utilities and others to utilize more of our natural gas? And then two, how can we pave a pathway to export? And those are going to be two really critical elements for us. Right now, the Craig report has called for a pretty substantial increase for the next legislature to have on their hands. However, with continued declines in coal, extreme volatility in the oil market, and continued declines in natural gas production, it's not a given 2 to 4 to 6 years from now. And so this current legislative session, I'm really hopeful that legislators are going to see the writing on the wall, come together, and to Governor Sullivan's point, put politics aside, focus on principle and what is right for Wyoming.
Excellent.
I know that's
Paul,
a bit long-winded, Wendy, but
that's great.
We've got big challenges ahead of us, and if we prioritize what matters instead of a lot of the stuff on the side, we can get there.
There you go. Very good. I'm going to sneak over here to Claire McFarland. Claire, do we have results?
Not really.
No.
I have I have the edge of a race. I have the edge of one.
All right. What's the edge of the race?
So hi everyone. It's so good to see you. I'm very giddy and very happy to be here.
We are so glad to have you. Okay, Claire, what are you bringing us? What updates?
Okay, so I am, being a Fremont County girl, I'm in charge of covering Sarah Penn and Ivan Posey's race tonight for the Reservation Concentrated District, House District 33. And so just very preliminary, not a game changer one way or another, but Penn took an early lead with just the votes from Kinnear, which is a little rancher town very near where I grew up, and absentee ballots. Now she's at 170 compared to Posey's 139. I expect to see a lot more back and forth throughout the region, throughout the evening. There was huge voter turnout on the reservation, which is where Posey is a longtime resident. In fact, almost a lifelong resident, some back and forth, but he was raised on the Wind River.
That's great. Thank you for that update. Anything else right now?
Not right now. I love election night. I love the conversation. Thank you so much. And, all of you for contributing.
Awesome.
No news on the school boards, Claire?
Oh gosh, Bill. Well, let me shift through my pages here because Julie Freese, the Fremont County Clerk, just printed me off a huge packet. So if you guys want to chatter while I find that, that's fine.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that real quickly because we want to take a moment and congratulate Senator John Barrasso for his win and welcome him to the conversation tonight. Hello, sir.
Well, Wendy, thanks so much. Thanks to the people of Wyoming. Very, very grateful, very thankful for all the support I've received from people around the state and this year personally in terms of what's going on with our family as well as with the election results. And it's very proud to have the opportunity to represent the people of Wyoming continue in the United States Senate. So thank you. Thanks, Wendy.
We're glad for you and glad to have your continued service there. You've got a national perspective, of course. You're representing Wyoming, but you're representing Wyoming on the national stage. Real quickly, sir, what are your thoughts on what the climate is right now for the election? With the polls, I mean, nothing's really happening yet.
Well, a couple of things. One is we have a great team from Wyoming in Washington. Loves working with Cynthia, visiting with her this evening, and Harriet as well. We're a team, and our job is to protect and to promote Wyoming. The jobs, the economy, the environment, our people, our special places, our resources, our values, our freedoms, and we're going to continue to fight for all of that. As you know, I'm very concerned with trying to make sure that the Republicans take the majority in the United States Senate. I've been traveling the country as well as working with President Trump, and J.D. Vance been traveling with President Trump as well as with J.D., again, trying to make sure that we can get the country back on track when 1 in 4 Americans, only 1 in 4, think the country's heading in the right direction. So it's still a little early to call some of these races. A lot of them are razor thin even going into this weekend. Lots of the races are considered toss-ups, too close to call. And the American people, I think, are turning out in record numbers. And we certainly seen that in Wyoming with early voting as well as great turnout today at the polls.
Very much so. I don't know how many of you noticed at your polls, but the lines at the polls were absolutely outrageous. So excellent. Thank you, sir, so much. Stick with us, please. Andrew Rossi is popping on here. Looks like Andrew might have a result or two, but he's still blacked out. So, oh, there we go.
Here now.
Andrew, what are you bringing us for news?
Well, what I've got so far is that in Platte County, it looks like incumbent Jeremy Haroldson has decisively secured another term as the representative of House District 4.
All right. Okay, so we know that one. Anything else from your perspective right now, what you're watching?
Nothing yet to report. I'm looking at races in Sheridan County, and I will pop back as soon as I can conclusively say anything about them.
All right. Thank you very much. Claire, do you have updates for us? What do you know?
I think what Bill was probably interested in is the Lander School Board race, which was hotly contested between two three-man coalitions of candidate slates. One, claiming to be much more conservative, one calling itself the common sense slate. And so for absentee ballots so far, Lander School Board, we have the common sense is what they've not called themselves progressive. The conservative side does call them progressive, but we have that slate of candidates performing better in absentee ballots. So like I said, this is very preliminary, but Gans has 599, Arbery, the conservatives coalition, has 336. Jacobs, incumbent, also conservative, has 376. Jensen, also conservative, incumbent, has 394. McLean, not on the conservative group, has 499, and Tilton has 559. So those are absentee ballots. I don't have Lander Vote Center yet.
All right. We look forward to hearing back from you later. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you.
So,
I have a question for the senator, Wendy.
Yes, Jimmy,
Senator
what is your question?
Congratulations on the win. What was it like barnstorming with former President Trump? It looks like he's got a ton of energy.
It's an astonishing amount of energy, Jimmy. I would call it intimidating energy. You know, I was with him in Las Vegas. I was there with Sam Brown, and this is in addition to the story you also ran about when I was with him at Pittsburgh for the Steelers game, and people were, chanting USA, USA, USA. But I was with him last Thursday and Friday. He did multiple events during the day, and we were in Las Vegas for an event with Sam Brown. He's the Senate candidate there. He does an hour and a half event. And he knew I was going to fly with him to Phoenix, where he did this program that evening. 20,000 people in an arena in Phoenix waiting for him. There were 20,000 in the arena in Las Vegas. And I thought he'd get on the plane and just kind of go and, take a nap or something, because he'd been event after event after. We get on the plane, and he comes and he sits with me and with Mark Wayne Mullins, senator from Oklahoma. They bring out the McDonald's burgers and fries, and we have dinner on the plane, and he's talking the whole time. And, he has his cell phone, and he has this pile of papers. I'll send you one or two of the pictures if you want, Jimmy. And so you can take a look at it. And then after we eat all this, then they bring out chocolate McFlurries from McDonald's that they have on the plane. He lands, and we get in the cars, go right to the arenas. And while he's in the car heading to the arena, he's doing telephone town hall meetings, calls into different congressional districts around the country, trying to get a Republican majority in the House, trying to preserve that. He gets there, does an hour and a half with Tucker Carlson. Then we go back to the hotel. We go to the hotel after that. It's now after 11. Now, I'll tell you, this is 11 p.m. Pacific time. He had started in Florida that morning. So, his was a 27-hour day. When you take a look, you add 3 more hours. The next morning, we're up again early in the morning. And I can send you a picture at the hotel in Phoenix before he was then going on and then going to Wisconsin and Michigan, and he just never stops. This guy has incredible amounts of energy, and I have a lot of energy, but I'll tell you, it's almost superhuman, the amount of energy that he has.
My Goodness. Well, you've had the adventures then along with him. I have to say, because you're a medical doctor, I have to wonder about your concerns with all those McDonald's meals.
And Wendy, can I jump in and ask the senator a quick
Please
question?
do. Please do.
RW,
First of all, congratulations. I know you must have been sweating for months. Hey, it looks like you're going to at least have a 51-49 Senate, which is a pretty hard working majority. Are you hopeful for more?
Oh, I am hopeful for more. I've been in 11 states with Senate races over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I was in Wisconsin for the last 2 days. Just got back to Wyoming last night. We did the tailgating with Eric Hovde before the Packers game, and then did the bus tour yesterday. So I'm really enthusiastic. But we've had, there are 4 states up there. What's Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, all toss-ups, all too close to call according to Charlie Cook and the way they rate these races. Nevada's been closing fast, Arizona as well. So many of them depend on how President Trump does there. I'm not ready to say we have 51 or 52 or 53 yet. I'm still waiting to make sure all of our Republican incumbents make it through. They called Ted Cruz. They've called Rick Scott, visited with both of them this evening. We're still waiting to hear into Deb Fischer's race in Nebraska. We can't afford to lose any. We picked up West Virginia that gets you to 50-50 if we don't lose any. And then I was with Sheehy in Montana last week on Wednesday. Incredible energy and turnout there for an event in the middle of the day. I had been there 6 years ago with Matt Rosendale, not that kind of energy. 12 years ago with Denny Rehberg, not that kind of energy. I'm very encouraged by what I saw in Montana. And then in Ohio, which I think President Trump's likely to win by 8 or 10 points, I think that means a lot of opportunity for Bernie Moreno. And I've been to Ohio 3 times with him. He's a real deal, and I'm hoping we can take that seat too.
Very good.
Great. And when's the leadership election, when you'll be number 2?
Well, the elections are next Wednesday. We'll be back in Washington come Tuesday. Monday, Veterans Day, where we honor all of those who served the country. It's a federal holiday, so we'll go back with a vote Tuesday evening. And then the leadership election is Wednesday. And as chairman of the conference, I preside over the election. And we'll elect a new leader because Mitch McConnell has announced he's stepping down from leader. He'll still be a senator. His term isn't up until the end of 2026. So he still has 2 more years left in his term. But John Cornyn, John Thune, and Rick Scott are running for that. And I'm running at this point, at least unopposed, to be the number 2. And for the people of Wyoming, that's, Al Simpson had that job for a number of years back when you were working on the Hill, Robin, when Pete was covering from the Pentagon.
Great. Well, congratulate. I mean, it's a premature congratulations, but congratulations anyway.
Thanks. I'm glad Friedenthal's not on. He was making fun of having had the Wyoming Cowboy on last time when I was on during the primary. And Tim Scott is calling right now. You remember Tim Scott from South Carolina. And hey, Tim, let me call you back. I'm on a Zoom call, but thanks so much. Thanks.
Right. Hey, I want to take this opportunity here real quickly. Mike Sullivan, you were good friends with former President Bill Clinton. He also liked McDonald's. We were talking about McDonald's earlier. Does this mean anything?
He had a lot of bad habits.
What Bill Clinton would do, he'd go out jogging and he'd go into a McDonald's and he'd walk by a table and he'd say, "Can I have one of your fries?" I mean, he would eat off of people's plates, or not plates, but he'd eat right out of the bag.
I just think that it's the McDonald's connection, right? It just it connects everybody. I want to not get an opportunity to introduce Pete Williams. He's been so patiently hanging out here. Pete Williams. Pete has been on the Hill. Pete has been in the Pentagon. Pete Williams he's an Emmy Award-winning journalist, and I want to get a chance to say hello to Pete Williams and ask Pete to weigh in here on this national scene, since we've been talking with Senator Barrasso on this national scene. Pete, I don't know if you can give us your face or if you're content to just be on audio, but thank you so much for joining us. Pete, tell us, there you are. Awesome. Great to see your face.
Wendy, if you're asking John Barrasso to criticize McDonald's, you're asking the wrong guy.
But it's the doctor thing. I have to ask those questions.
Everything in moderation. That's
right. Yeah, right.
There
Including
we go.
moderation.
There we go.
And secondly, don't worry about waiting to come on. This is a less of a wait than for 29 years at NBC. So, I'm used to it. My contribution here, and it's great to see so many old friends, is to talk about something. We're all talking about what's going on in Wyoming. There is that presidential election going on today. And 4 years ago, it was a big deal about what was going to happen when Congress actually counted the votes under the Electoral Counting Act. And Congress doesn't do, and this is not John Barrasso's fault, but Congress doesn't do a lot these days. But one of the things that it did do that was extremely important after the chaos of the last election was to clarify this 1879 law that was admittedly one of the worst federal statutes on the books about how Congress counts the votes after the Electoral College meets when Congress convenes in early January. And I just want to highlight some of the really important changes. In the past, any single member of either the House or Senate could object to a state slate of electors. Now it takes a fifth of the body to do that. So 20 senators and 87 members of the House. That's a big change. Secondly, it clarifies the role of the vice president. You may recall last time there was some talk about whether Mike Pence could disallow a slate of electors. The new Electoral Counting Act that will guide Congress when it meets in January says it makes it very clear that the vice president is just sort of acting as the master of ceremonies. His role is strictly ministerial. He does not have the power to disclaim any state slate of electors. And then the third, and again, a very important change in the law is it clarifies when a slate of electors must be accorded respect by the Congress. And that is when the governor or the duly designated election official in the state certifies that the electors that were sent in from that state are in fact the certified electors. In that case, Congress must count those votes, unless, of course, people object to them, as I just said earlier, a fifth of the House. But there's no question now about a state being able to send dueling slates of electors and then have one from the governor and one from the legislature. It's whoever is under the state's law given the power to certify those electors. Those are the ones that get to the floor of the Congress when it meets to count the electoral votes. Those are really, really important changes. And, great credit goes to the Congress for changing this really screwed up law.
That is, I want to go to Senator Barrasso on that because, of course, you were part of that. And so, Senator, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I certified each of the states the election last time. I think this is an improvement of the law that it as played now, because the vice president's role really is just to open and count and not to weigh in on things. So I agree with Pete that, and I expect that's what's going to happen. And we will do that. This new Senate is sworn in on January 3rd, and the Electoral College will meet on January 6th, and the inauguration will take place as it has for the last 200 and some years on January 20th.
Very good. Very good.
Hey, Wendy, I have a question for Pete, and I just want to remind everybody that when we get election results coming in, our reporters will pop in and say, this is what we have. But Pete, I want to go back to you. I remember as a very young child watching you on K2 radio.
Oh, thanks a lot. I thought you were going to say your grandparents liked me a lot.
No, on K2, Pete, I remember watching you in the 84 84 election and covering it. K2 was a great TV station when you and Susan Anderson and Charlie Brown were all on. I wonder the change that you've seen it as a journalist over the past 40 years and how it differs with what we're doing tonight.
Well, this website and Wildfile and a few others are the only places now to go to get good statewide election returns. When I was at K2 back in the glory days, we had a secret weapon that I've never publicly disclosed, but I'll do so now. We were trying to figure out what's the most dependable way to get races from every county, and we went to the Mormon churches in every county seat. And we would have dry runs and rehearsals. They showed up for all of them. They came through on election night. It gave us a big leg up. But you're right. I mean, so many news organizations in Wyoming now they don't have the horses to be able to do election coverage. Um, it's a serious problem. I give Cowboy State Daily a lot of credit for stepping in to offer statewide news coverage. I have to say, I'm on the board of WildFile, as you know, and WildFile is also helping to fill a gap. But as Bill Sniffen knows, the Wyoming news media is under a lot of pressure, and it's just harder and harder to get good local news coverage.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for being part of our conversation tonight. Feel free to stick around if you'd like. We do want to real quickly ask, we've got a couple of people who have popped on here that are guests tonight. We've got Senator Sherry Steinmetz has joined us here. She is from Lingle, and we're glad to have her with us tonight. Senator Steinmetz, you have been with the in either the House of Representatives or the Senate for a number of years now, and tell us what this round of election, what this election means from your perspective and the changes that we're looking at now from a local position rather than a nationwide position.
Sure. Well, thank you. And hello, everyone. It's good to be with you tonight. I think the citizens of Wyoming have given us a clear mandate that when we run as Republicans, they want us to govern as Republicans, and that the Republican values that they work so hard at the local level to espouse and to create platforms and resolutions behind mean something to them in the state of Wyoming. And we stand by our values, and we love our independent rural way of life. We love our communities and our neighbors. And I think they want all of us that they've sent to the state legislature to get to work, recognize that those people they have elected are their selection. We need to get along and work together for the benefit of our citizens and for the state of Wyoming.
Very good. I want to go back real quickly to Senator Barrasso because, of course, Senator, you were in the state level and served in the state legislature before you went up and leveled up, as it were. Tell us a little bit about did something similar? Did you have to deal with the same similar ideas of every year, every election cycle, thinking which direction are we going to go?
Well, what I loved about the Wyoming legislature is each bill was a single topic as opposed to the way they glom things together in Congress. And amendments actually had to be germane to that bill. We lived within our means. We balanced our budget every year. And each year, Mike Enzi and I and Cynthia, when we were the three of us and the two senators and she was in the House, would introduce legislation in Congress to say, hey, you ought to do things Wyoming's way. Balance the budget every year, single topic bills, amendments germane. It just doesn't work that way. In Congress, because if it looks like something's going to pass, everybody tries to load things on top of it that are their pet project. So, I think the founding fathers in Wyoming had it right, and we don't have it following that way in Washington now, and it's too bad. It's much to the detriment of the country. But when I was there, and Friedenthal's not on tonight, but we did the Hathaway Scholarship. It was a bipartisan effort. Republicans and Democrats working together, getting it passed. Friedenthal signed it, named it after Governor Hathaway, who was dying at the time, Republican governor, signed by a Democrat governor. It was a different time. And we were all saying, what can we best do for the people of Wyoming when we had all that energy money coming into the state? And also, this is great. Let's do it right. Now we're fighting with the federal government who doesn't want us to even use the energy resources that we have in Wyoming. That we have a Secretary of Interior says leave it in the ground, no exploration for energy on federal lands. They're blocking exporting LNG. You had a presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, that said she was going to refuse to allow fracking in the United States at a time when we need more energy. So I think things are more divisive now nationally as well, and it's a real challenge for us because we want to do things right for the people of Wyoming.
I want to go back real quickly to what you were talking about how they do things differently in Wyoming than they do at the national level,
and better.
And so I want to go.
Better.
Yeah, and I want to go to. We've got three local, I guess, or state level Republican leaders here on our guest panel. We've got Dallas Terrell, who is a longtime Wyoming Politico. He's the Laramie County Republican Party chair. We've got Sherry Steinmetz, and we also have Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams, who is joining us from Park County here. And I want to say thank you all for being a part of this, but I want to ask also, what are your thoughts with these topics that we're talking about all of the ways that things could shift in our legislature with this upcoming election? I'm going to go to Rachel here. Rachel, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Wendy, for having me on. Obviously, this presidential election is really important for Wyoming. It means a lot for Wyoming. Essentially, Democrat presidents are bad for America and for Wyoming, because we power and we feed the nation. And the other parties made it clear that they want to make it harder, if not impossible, for us to do this. And so we rely a lot on low regulations and especially on the decisions that Congress makes, and to keep federal government overreach out of our state, so that we can be successful and we can flourish. So I'm excited about this upcoming legislative session. I think we're going to have some great changes. We have the opportunity to really shine across this nation and preserve Wyoming values.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Dallas, you've been so patient being on here and hanging out. We want to ask again from the perspective of, we've got so many Republicans that have been up for that really Wyoming skews so heavily Republican. What are the challenges ahead for such a almost uniform one-party body? And Dallas, because you're the Laramie County Republican Party chair, what do you see as those challenges?
Hi there. Well, thank you guys for having me tonight. I would like to just clarify, I am the Laramie County State Committee man, so I represent
thank you.
To the state. And I want to first give out a shout out real quick to Harry Hegman and John Barrasso. Congratulations on a win. You guys have been absolutely wonderful for Wyoming. We're super proud that you represent us. I think one of the challenges to talk more about our legislator here locally that we're looking at, we have two very contested races right now here in Laramie County that have came really close with the Jacob Wasserberger race and Sarah Burlingame and the Gary Brown versus Jen Solis race. Those races we have been working at very hard. We know that our opposition in those races has came at us pretty hard. They've had a lot of outside influence in those races as far as the Democrats go. And we've done everything we can up until literally the last final hours pushing for our candidates to win. So hopefully that's what happens. I think that together and with a Republican majority, we can do good things as long as the Republicans are willing to sit down and have conversations with each other. I think that's the key to our success. And I really like what I've seen so far. I think we're going to have a very successful upcoming legislative session.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to go back to Tom Love now, because Tom, you served in the legislature for such a long time. What are your thoughts about how there's so many Republicans, and how's everybody getting along? Because we've got the Freedom Caucus, we've got the Wyoming Caucus. Now that you're outside of that, what are your thoughts on how everybody's going to work together?
Too great a majority sometimes is no majority at all. You start eating your own. And we've seen that a lot with the Republican Party and the fights between the caucuses and name calling and disparagements both ways. And that, I think, is destructive for the party, and I think it's destructive for the state. What happened, and when I started in the legislature with Senator Barrasso, the Democrats comprised a third of the legislature. To override a veto, we had to have a Democratic vote, along with all of the Republicans back in the day. Obamacare happened, And as a result of the individual freedoms, and there were also some attacks on energy, but primarily it was the Obamacare election, the Democratic Party went to a super minority status. And then there were Republicans in power and then disaffected Republicans. And so there became a power struggle within the party. And that started toward the end of my period of time there and just grew over time. Some say that there's two parties. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe that generally politics in Wyoming are local, but there are a few hot button issues. And so the websites that correlate people who vote with the Democrats actually correlate whether somebody's from Albany County or Laramie County, where they vote on local issues together. So I don't know what the effect is going to be. I think that things in Wyoming are the way they are for a reason, and that once you understand the reason that things are the way they are, you don't see a lot of drastic changes in government. But we'll see. I mean, maybe there are going to be some drastic changes. If there are, it'll be interesting to watch.
Okay, very good. I want to go to Sherry and to Rachel, because you two are both serving in the Wyoming legislature right now. What do you see as some of those shifts that could happen, or the divisions between the Republican Party? I'll start with Senator Steinmetz.
Well, thank you. I think the biggest shift we've seen is toward the Democrat Party becoming so radicalized that we've had to push back in ways no one would have ever thought. For example, who would think that boys want to play in girls' sports, that we'd face some of the issues we have with our books in our libraries and school, that we would see some of the DEI measures at the University of Wyoming, our only land grant institution. And so that is what has really changed and radicalized. And then we also have to think about, where did all the Democrats go? Some of them came into the Republican Party. And so when you see the war in the Republican Party, sometimes it's because folks have just simply game the system to get elected. And that's when I talk about, when we run as Republicans, people expect us to govern as Republicans. And I think when we coalesce around principles and not personalities, then we can get a lot of work done for the citizens of Wyoming. Mr. Earlrich, I think I'm not sure how you say your name, but you were having an interesting discussion about diversifying our economy earlier. Before I popped we're having a watch party here, so I popped into a quiet corner to visit. But value added is a really important discussion we need to start having in the state of Wyoming. We export so many raw products. We need to be talking about how do we add value to the products that we do have and that we do, that the opportunities that are there for us to possess. And if our university and all of the state can get on the same page and start pulling in the same direction there, we have a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of opportunity to work together. Our citizens have sent us down to do a job. They have given us a mandate of which direction they would like us to go. I think they want us to address all of the governor's vetoes from the last session. They want us to address property taxes. Illegal immigration is on their mind. The fact that we have a lot of federal overreach, for example, right now in the Ag Committee, which I chair, we are dealing with the EID mandate in livestock. That is a huge issue for our food supply, cost to consumers, producers, the entire food supply system in the state of Wyoming. And we have found a way to coalesce other states. There's an exemption in a rule. It's not a law. It was not passed by Congress. It's just a rule. And we found an exemption where we can get together with other states, form MOUs. That's a bill we're proposing in the Ag Committee. And we can have state agreements. this traceability rule that they're proposing only affects 11% of the producers. That is not a superior traceability rule to what we have right now. Our traceability system far exceeds what they're proposing that we do, and it's far less costly. And so we have suppliers who are willing to continue to make the metal clip tags for us. And these are the kinds of solutions we really need to bring to our state. The Rock Springs and Buffalo RMPs from the BLM, we have a bill to fight that. That was one of the bills the governor vetoed for the legislature to be able to hire special counsel to fight those things. These are things that are critically important to the state of Wyoming, to our future, to our kids, to our grandkids. And these are the things that we need to go to work on for the state and the citizens of Wyoming.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I want to just real quickly give the opportunity for Senator Barrasso to sign off. We want to congratulate him once again because I know that he's got lots of obligations yet tonight. So, sir, congratulations and thank you for being part of our panel tonight.
Well, thanks for doing this. And Jimmy Orr, congratulations on putting this together. Bill Sniff and I will tell you that today I had coffee with a bunch of guys and they want to know why you haven't written about them. We had future past Speaker of the House, Rick Tempest was there, former Speaker. You got a number of a number of members of the current legislature were there. Bill Landon, Jim Anderson. We had Bruce Hinchy was there, Johnny Burton. So it's a group that meets at Blue Ridge every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. Former lobbyist Bob Tarantola. It's a heck of a group, some county commissioners. So they want a whole column, Bill Sniffen, on that because we love what you're writing about and we love following all of you in Cowboy State Daily. So, Jimmy, I'll send you the pictures from the Trump Force One with the McDonald's and what it's like traveling with a former president and hope to be future president.
Well, congratulations, Senator. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you. I want to quickly go to former Governor Sullivan real quickly as well, because we wanted to talk once again about the makeup of the current Wyoming legislature. And Governor Sullivan, what was the makeup of the legislature when you were in office?
I can't give you specifics, but I believe it was, as Tom said, it was probably 20 to 30% Democrat, the balance Republican. And I think Tom would agree, having a minority, an active minority is healthy. And having a two-party system is healthy. And we shouldn't forget that, but I don't know what we do about it right now.
Yep.
Yes. And I was signed off. I was just sitting here enjoying the conversation.
Well, hang out then. We're
glad I'm going to leave shortly. So thank you for having me.
We appreciate your being on the panel tonight and being a guest with us. I don't want to go too far. Rachel Rodriguez-Williams, hang out for just a moment. We've got Susan Stupson that has joined us. Oh, hang on. I just saw that we've got Claire McFarland. So that means that Claire has some results for us. So Claire, what do you know?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt the action here, but so I have unofficial results for Lander, Fort Washakie, Kinnear I already tallied for you earlier, Eathity, Shoshone, and a bulk of the absentees. I'm still missing early votes for Fremont County. They're working through those, and I don't yet have the tally for Riverton. So this is not final at all, but for the hotly contested or so we thought, House District 33 race between Ivan Posey and incumbent Representative Sarah Penn. Posey has taken a strong lead, nearly doubling Penn as the votes from the reservation and Lander rolled in. So he is at 984 to Penn's 519.
Wow, that's a switch. Thank you so much for bringing us that. Anything else?
Well, I know Bill's watching that school board race, and so we have two of these self-titled conservative candidates taking the lead here with Lander Inn, with their hometown inn. Jacobs in first place. Now you can only elect 3, I believe. Jacobs in first place with 1937. Incumbent Jensen, 1864, and in third place, Mara Gans, who was not part of the self-titled conservative coalition.
All right. Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing from you again with more results.
Hey, Claire.
Oh,
hey, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where are the other reporters, Claire? Why are you the only one reporting so far?
Because, am I really? The others haven't popped. I thought Andrew popped in.
Well, Andrew popped in with one. Get everybody else going.
It just depends on your county too. But yeah, I can. Fremont County has always been pretty quick and pretty lively. And maybe that's why I get so giddy every election. But yeah, I will rally people if I can.
All right.
Thank you, Claire.
Good job, Claire.
It's
Thanks.
Christmas. It's Christmas for Claire. We love this.
It is.
So
She was very excited this morning.
She was very excited this morning. You guys would have laughed. It was awesome. Susan Stubson has joined us, and I just real quickly want to go to Susan to talk about her experience today. She was an election judge at the Natrona County Fairgrounds. And Susan, your day was crazy, beginning at 7 a.m. Tell us real quickly about how your day has gone.
Yeah, well, thank you, Wendy. It didn't start at 7, it started more like 5. So let me just give a little PSA across the state for our poll workers and our election workers. Man, these people work really, really hard, not just the paid ones. There's hundreds of volunteers and people that are out there. So if you're a poll worker, we reported to the polls at 6 a.m. Polls open at 7, as you all know. So we work 7 to 7. And then when polls close, then there's more work to be done. So it's an exhausting day. It's hugely, hugely gratifying. This was really, really interesting to me. I've worked a number of election cycles, both primaries and general, if I can. And the contrast between the primary in August and the general election right now could not be more different.
Really?
And I want to speak to that in a little bit. I think that I've had about 30 minutes to think about it a little bit, but so I think that there's some takeaways that we can kind of sift through, golly, over the next couple of days, weeks, and months. But mostly, this was clear to me that this was a referendum on Donald Trump. The polls were relentless, people voting obviously for the Republican ticket and for Donald Trump specifically. It was insane. When I got there were lines out the door before 7 a.m. and it never relented until about 6:45. And it was really interesting. You know, you can't say anything, but it's really interesting to receive information and just hear what people are telling you, and felt really, really strongly about this election. One of the things that's concerning to me, or maybe a takeaway, is it's clear that Wyoming is now wholesale. This is a nationalized state. And when you contrast the primary race, which 90% of the legislative seats were decided in the primary, there was a lot of really important seats that happened in August. Correspondingly, incredibly low turnout, right? I mean, so that's where, I mean, query whether Wyoming voters, what we should be focusing on, those seats in the primary or in November. So it's clear that the focus was nationalized. It was on the presidential campaign as well as the federal, Brasso and Hageman. So that was interesting. I think we can talk about it. I want to think about it a lot and kind of think if there's some takeaways. In my mind, just off the top of my head, I think it really makes this a good starting point for a discussion about open primaries. You know, in Natrona County, where I'm at, there's 12 plus legislative seats, all of which were decided in August, not now. So you really want to have that collection, that the hugest collection of people in the state. I mean, today we had thousands of people coming through. That would be a great time for them to make really important decisions about all those races, not in August.
That's great. I want to go to and have Rachel Rodriguez Williams give her thoughts on this as well, because this is something that, as the new chair of the Freedom Caucus, this is information that you will need moving forward as a leader in there. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Wendy. Again, I wholeheartedly agree with Senator Simons and a lot of the things that she said. The reality is that we have a new conservative legislature. The people of Wyoming really have demanded a new and conservative direction of their state representatives. And I don't think it's any secret that essentially all of the members of the caucus in which I belong to, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, that we're not far right radicals or jackals. We're essentially normal Wyoming conservatives that share normal common sense principles of our neighbors. And right now, that's the direction Wyoming wants us to go. I believe that Wyoming's government will better reflect the people than ever before. And again, Senator Steinmetz really summed it up on the direction that we need to go. I would say one of the biggest priorities that I've heard, the hottest issue out there across the state, is property taxes. Obviously, Wyomingites are feeling the effect of inflation, but there's uncontrollable property taxes. And it's higher in some counties more so than the other. And so I too believe that that we should see relief. All Wyomingites should be available to receive relief. In all property owners should. We shouldn't be picking winners and losers. And that includes residential homeowners and small business owners. I have many constituents who didn't qualify for the refund program, and it needs to be all across the board. And the reality too is that we can provide real relief. It can exist in Wyoming without gutting local government. And that's evidenced by the fact that our schools, our counties, our municipalities, and other entities that are funded by the state have maintained their operations prior to the out-of-control increases in our property taxes. And I cite that about probably 5 or 6 years ago when that started.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel, on that. I'm going to break away and go to Leo Wolfson, because Leo obviously has something breaking to tell us. So, Leo, what do you have for us?
We actually don't have anything breaking, just giving people an update. We have a lot of results that have not returned yet. We're still, refreshing web pages and still checking these with these county clerks to see if we could get any results. So just giving an update on that front. One interesting update I can, however, give is that the AP report is reporting that 31% of Wyoming's votes are in, and as of right now, former President Donald Trump holds a 76% to 22% lead over Vice President Kamala Harris in Wyoming. So that's a 54% margin lead right now. That's a bit more than what Trump won Wyoming by in 2020. So that is notable that at least as of right now, there's still a lot of votes left to be counted. Laramie County, the most populous county in the state, has not returned any results yet. But early votes show that Trump is definitely holding on to his dominating support in Wyoming.
Thank you very much, Leo. We appreciate that. I want to go to Rob Wallace here, because Rob served as the head of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and Deputy Secretary of the Interior under President Trump's administration. And what do you see, Rob, with Wyoming, obviously, no surprise, being so completely for Donald Trump in this, or at least so overwhelmingly for Donald Trump in this? What do you see for the next Trump administration?
That is a great question, Wendy. I read the national publications about Trump and the Department of Interior, and if you read it and you weren't there, you would not believe what they were telling you. But Donald Trump, when I was at the Department of Interior, did one of the most consequential things of any president in the United States. He signed what's called the Great American Outdoor Act, which was the first time it put over $13 billion of funds into our national parks and created the first permanent funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. No other president since 1965 got close to doing that. Donald Trump did it, and I keep pretty good contact with people I worked with in the National Park Service. They will tell you all over the country, from Acadia to the water systems at Grand Canyon to the things they're doing in Yellowstone and Grand Teton. It was one of the most consequential programs for national parks in history, but he doesn't get credit for it, and that's a shame, because I think there's going to be more opportunities for him to promote our fisheries and wildlife and national parks again if he's elected for this term. It's an untold story, and either shame on us for not telling it strongly enough.
Okay, I'm gonna switch over to Paul Ulrich. Unless Leo, do you have something else that you've got to add in here? Yes. Okay, Leo first.
We have actually some results returned from Laramie County. Now, I should really clarify that these are not all of the results. For the 7 vote centers in Laramie County are reporting, so just over half of the votes in Laramie County, roughly. And some interesting results to report so far. Representative Jared Olson is easily beating Democrat Marguerite Herman in Senate District 8 by about 2-to-1 margin. The race that we really are looking at, though, Republican Jacob Wasserberger currently leads Democrat Sarah Burlingame by about 90 votes in House District 11. And in the race for House District 41, Gary Brown, the Republican, is leading Democrat Jen Solis by about 60 votes, roughly. And then those are the big ones that we're looking at there. Not a surprise, but Republican Rob Geringer, the son of former Governor Jim Geringer, is easily holding off Democrat Bob Ray in House District 42. He's winning by about 700 votes right now. And Representative Bob Nicholas, a longtime state legislator, is also easily holding off Democrat Jordan Evans in House District 7. He leads by about 600 votes right now. So that's probably about roughly 60%, maybe slightly less of Laramie County's votes are returned.
Very good. Excellent. Just real quickly, I want to go to Senator Steinmetz about those results. Does this mean good things for your particular perspective on this? What do these results or preliminary results mean to you?
Well, of course, we're so far getting Republicans elected, and there have been some concerning results out of Lander. I wanted to go back to Mrs. Stubbson's comments about the primary elections, though, while we were on that subject. That is when the party selects their candidates. So it's a far cry different from the general election. And yes, many times they're decided, but from some of these hotly contested races across the state, sometimes they're not. We see the Penn race is very close, and others. We haven't heard anything from Albany County yet, and the race is over there as far as I know. And so the primary does hold a important spot in our constitutional republic and our form of government. And so it's a very important aspect of how our elections are conducted.
Okay. Susan Stubbson, do you have a response to that?
Yes, thank you. Totally agree, Senator. The best electorate is an engaged electorate. So I'm thinking in terms of volume. When you contrast today's turnout, overwhelmingly huge turnout, versus the primary turnout, what would be better for our state is to have the maximum amount of people who are willing to go to the polls vote. That's my point.
Very good. I want to switch over to Liz Brimmer, because Liz, you have watched so many of these elections from a journalistic standpoint. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you saying I'm old?
No, ma'am. I'm saying you have so much wisdom to offer us.
No, I have. I watched a lot, and I am old. But listen, these elections, the primary today, if you want to go back to the primary, you know, it was decided. This is math. Elections are a very large collective math exercise, and the math in Wyoming was that there's change, and that change now goes forward, and we all will, participate and watch and be a part. And I think the better part of the day after an election or months after a primary is actually to wish the victors well. Now is the hard work of governing, and it begins, and we can all participate in that. So the same is true for these 5 elections that folks are watching tonight. What I look for and what I think is very interesting is when you look at the primary, and I'm not taking anything away at all from the victors, but have the lowest voter turnout since 2016. It just shows me that from a message standpoint, and I talked about this in the primary, on primary night, that there's some more wood to chop on all sides, the whole spectrum, any faction that not a lot of the messages were motivating. And again, to have the lowest turnout since 2016, it just shows that there's more engagement to do, more work to do for having it be, a higher participation rate. And, for me, again, looking ahead at the, teasing the other election, it's really, interesting to think of 2026. And so, we're all going to be waiting for election results from tonight, but 2026 is going to be a fascinating year. Maybe we'll all be back here again, but, 5 statewide elected seats, multiple legislative seats again, and but an off-year presidential cycle. So will the turnout be low again? Will there be more engagement? Will these messages take traction? It's yet to, a story yet to be told.
Very good. I want to go back to Leo Wolfson here real quickly, and then I'm going to go up to Rod Miller.
Yeah, I got another quick short update. This is not nearly as extensive, but there was 2 notable write-in campaigns that were going on around the state. It looks like both those write-in candidates lost by a pretty healthy margin. A write-in campaign for Cody Mayor Matt Hall was defeated by Nina Weber in Cody. She won by about 2,000 votes, presuming most of those write-in votes for Matt Hall. Same goes for Representative John Conrad in Mountain View in Southwest Wyoming. His campaign also lost by a fairly similar margin to challenger Joe Webb as well. So not a surprise by any means, but those write-in campaigns did go down. The question I wanted to ask both Senator Steinmetz and Representative Rachel Rodriguez-Williams. I'm curious from your perspective. We're mentioning the potential governor's race. It's 2 years away still from basically tonight, but everyone's already thinking about it. What are your 2 thoughts about what the next gubernatorial candidate should look like in Wyoming, and what might be some of the qualifications you'd like to see in said candidate?
We'll go with Rachel.
Thank you, Leo, for the question. I think we have a lot to learn from our sitting current governor right now. As you know, there were several bills that were passed by the state legislature that were really important to the people, and they were vetoed by our current governor. I would say that our next governor, obviously, I want them to be conservative, but they need to be really connected to the people of Wyoming statewide. Wyoming is America's last hope. And we saw tonight what potential Wyoming can have. And I think there's a lot of people out there that saw what Florida did tonight under the leadership of Governor DeSantis. And I can tell you, I'm a little envious of what Florida is accomplishing. I think Wyoming needs a strong conservative governor that, again, is connected to the people of Wyoming, that constantly checks the pulse of the people of Wyoming, and is willing to represent Wyoming in a way that can't be changed. Nobody wants Wyoming to become Colorado. That's a fact. During the COVID pandemic, we saw people, coming to Wyoming and moving here because of the freedoms that we have. I have I'm very, very concerned about the Green New Deal that's being pushed, and the way that our energy industry is being threatened. States are sovereign, and I think that it's time that Wyoming starts acting like it.
Thank you. And then real quickly, Senator Steinmetz, in answer to Leo's question.
Thank you, Wendy. For me, I think it boils down to the fact that this presidential race will determine whether we'll be able to work with the federal government or whether they'll continue to be adversarial to the state of Wyoming, and that will then in turn reflect on what kind of a governor Wyoming would elect and what our citizens actually need. We are going to need someone with the expertise to navigate the bureaucracy that we're seeing come out of Washington, D.C., and try to eliminate some of the red tape that we're seeing. And so I think it's going to be an all hands on deck, regardless of what happens. But there will be a different capacity if we have a president that's friendly to our state or one that's adversarial.
Okay, thank you very much. Claire has jumped on. Claire has updates. Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yep. Thank you.
Gosh dang it. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. Yeah, so Fremont County, everything except the early voting and the Arapahoe Vote Center has been counted in the unofficial results. And what it's showing is Ivan Posey, very difficult, if not impossible to beat at this point. I mean, anything could happen. I don't know how many people voted early, but he is at 1,097 or 57% of the vote. And Representative Penn is at 753 or 39% of the vote. And so that's still Arapahoe left to count. And when I did an exit poll there earlier today, because I went there trying to vote, the exit poll was 100% Posey.
Okay. All right. Thank you very, very much.
Wendy, I'm sorry. I have one more thing.
Got more? Oh, go for it. Yes, please.
Here in Fremont County, actually, the big story is the Axe the Tax movement, or the economic development tax, the 0.5% tax. Very, very contentious here because it's such a mixed bag. On the one hand, it supports transportation infrastructure, and on the other hand, lots of economic development projects that often take on the form of grants to private businesses. That is looking like it's lagging or failing. At 55% of people against it and 39% of people for it.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Lastly, those school board results that I had for Bill last time are pretty much still the same. We have Jacobs, Jensen, and then not describing herself as conservative, Mara Gans.
Okay. All right. Leo?
Also have an update. This is a very brief update on some of the results for the statewide on the constitutional amendment. We only have officially really 4 counties returning so far on that, but just thought I would give people an update where that stands. This is the constitutional amendment that would create a separate class. It would create a separate class of taxation for residential properties in Wyoming that could theoretically lead to a reduction of the property tax rates, theoretically. Right now, this is looking like actually it's very close. Right now, from these 4 counties, about 1,000 more people have voted for it than against it. But then, however, you also have to factor in the undervotes, which is people who didn't cast a vote on that, which counts as a no vote. And when you factor in those 1,600 undervotes, basically it is losing right now by about 500 votes. So we'll keep an eye on what happens with that. That's actually a pretty big deal. A lot of people have been talking about it. But if that result that we see right now stays final, that would be rejected.
All right. That is an interesting development. Thank you so much. I want to turn the conversation back just a step because we've got so many different directions we're going to go. But we were talking about the low primary turnout versus the really high presidential turnout. And Rod Miller had something he wanted to say on that, and I did not want to neglect that. So, Rod, what were your thoughts on that?
Primary elections and political parties are not mandated by the Wyoming Constitution. In fact, they aren't even mentioned in the Wyoming Constitution. So why the state of Wyoming would spend any time and energy conducting primary elections for private political parties is beyond me. It makes no sense.
That is a fantastic observation. I want to take this down to Cassie Craven. Because Cassie, I love the fact she calls herself a policy nerd. Cassie, what are your observations on that?
Well, I'd agree, I think, in large part with what Senator Steinmetz pointed out. The two-party system is a fundamental linchpin, if you will, of our democracy. And I think what we're seeing now are some pretty competitive primaries. In fact, in many instances, the end-all be-all, of the whole race, so to speak. And we're seeing a push toward the more conservative end of that spectrum. And so from a state resource perspective, I think that's an interesting inquiry, but I think there's no doubt that the two-party system is pretty fundamental to our democracy.
Okay. Thank you for those observations very much.
Counterpoint?
Please do, Rod. Absolutely.
Why should the government of the state of Wyoming conduct elections for private political parties like the Republicans or the Democrats? Even though a two-party system is necessary, I agree. The state of Wyoming has no place in that batting order. All the state of Wyoming requires really is a slate of candidates to present on the general election ballot. How that slate of candidates is derived shouldn't concern state government. If the Republican Party or the Democratic Party want to hold their primaries and select a candidate by having a whittling contest, that's fine with me. It would be cheaper and less traumatic for the state of Wyoming if that happened.
Very interesting. I want somebody else to chime in here on this because I think this is a fascinating debate as to should we even have these primaries. Liz, what are your thoughts?
I think we have primaries and we're going to keep them. Well, that's the system, and this is the marketplace of ideas. This is a forum for how to, have civil society debates, and this is how we've chosen to organize ourselves, whether it's in the Constitution or not. We're going to have primaries in Wyoming, and they're going to be robust. And I think the real opportunity is to, engage the electorate more in primaries, to have our messages have traction and include more, and have more people vote. That'll be the opportunity in elections going forward. And I think we'll have, robust elections in Wyoming, especially in presidential years, because it's all the panelists have said, Wyoming is dramatically impacted by the federal government. These are pocketbook issues. These are jobs. These are families. These are, all these things in our communities that put all of us on the line, and so we all have a stake in it. And you know, I don't think we're going to change the structure, and you know, I frankly don't think we should. I think what we should do is try to engage more people, so that when we say we represent people, when we say we represent the state of Wyoming, we have more numbers behind it. Again, I think these are all math exercises, and the more math, the better.
Okay,
So,
very good.
Leah,
Yes.
would you be in favor of open primaries?
I don't think so. You know, but I'm always open to being educated by anyone. So, you know, yeah, let's have a conversation offline. But my gut tells me no.
Okay. Rob Wallace, you'd raise your hand.
I wondered if I could interject a historic note in this conversation,
Please.
Talking about the governors. I was struck by you know, that Mark Gordon won 2 years ago by 72% of the vote, and already now he's at war with certain factions of his own party, and it just goes to show you how quickly things can change in our state. But I did some homework, much to Jimmy's surprise. I wanted to reflect back on the 1965 governor's message to the legislature. These are the things the governor of Wyoming said to the Wyoming legislature in 1965. He proposed to repeal the ban on accepting federal aid to education. He wanted to raise the minimum wage from 75 cents to $1. He wanted higher workers' comp payments. He wanted more generous support for the University of Wyoming. He wanted higher retirement pay for state employees, and he wanted to repeal the law forbidding interracial marriages. 1965, by Rod, guess who that was? Cliff Hansen, our governor in 1965, who went on to serve in the Senate. And he at the time, he had 13 Republicans and 12 Democrats in the Senate, 34 Democrats in the House, 27 Republicans. So he had nonpartisanship drilled into him. He went on to serve in the United States Senate, and while he was there as a minority member of the United States Senate, he changed the mineral royalty payment from 37.5% to 50% to come back to the state. That's meant billions of dollars to the state because of the way he did business at the time. And my point is that we are here today on the shoulders of other people that got us here. And they got us here in ways that might not work today, but it's mindful to be respectful of them and how we are what we are in Wyoming.
That's fantastic, Rob. Thank you very much. That was a great history lesson, and one that I think that we all need to keep in mind. I hate to shift conversation away from this because there's more we can unpack there, but Leo Wolfson popped in. Leo, what information do you have for us?
Yeah, Wendy, I got another update from Laramie County. It's still not the final results, but we're getting pretty darn close. 6 of 7 vote centers have reported in Laramie County now, so we're really kind of nearing the end there. Both hot races that we're watching, both Republican candidates extended their leads during that little break that we had there. Jacob Wasserberger leads Sarah Burlingame now by about 170 votes. So I wouldn't say that race is quite done yet, but that's going to be pretty hard for Burlingame probably to come up from behind there. So Wasserberg is probably pretty close to clinching that. And then also in the Gary Brown Jen Solis race, Gary Brown has extended his lead to 140 votes in that race. Kind of the same deal there too. I am not sure whether this counts early ballots yet, early voting totals yet. So I wouldn't call either of those two till we're completely done. But it's looking like those two competitive Cheyenne races are going to be going to the Republicans for now.
Okay, very good. So Senator Steinmetz and Representative Rodriguez-Williams, those are more votes, I guess, from your party there. I don't want to keep you two because I know we were supposed to just have you on for a short time, so feel free to sign off. I wanted to thank you both for being on today and for giving us your thoughts and your perspectives on this. So thank you for continuing to serve your constituents.
Well, thank you, Wendy, and thank you, everyone, for your coverage tonight. We appreciate you. Congratulations to all the winners, and keep cranking the news out for the citizens of Wyoming. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Rachel. Good to see you both. Thank you both for being part of what we're doing tonight. our panelists have been so patient, and we told them that it was going to be, until 9:30, and we're now at 9:48. So if you'll all be patient with us, we are going to go probably till just 10 o'clock. We won't go later than 10 o'clock. But I wanted to, because I think that it's an important topic that we were talking about earlier, about what a Donald Trump presidency means for Wyoming from an energy perspective. And I was going to Paul Ulrich, and then I had to come away because we had a reporter come on, and we have to do this again because here's Jackie Dorothy, who's here to give us a quick update. Jackie, what precincts are you telling us about? What are you reporting to us from?
Oh, geez.
Maybe not.
Just one moment.
Okay, we can hear you.
All right. So we just got the results from Thermopolis, and and what people were interested here is in the county commissioner's race. Just one moment, please.
Okay. So county commissioner's race in Thermopolis, which is interesting that that's one that made it to the general election, because most of those were decided in the primary. So Jackie,
what
tell
we're
us.
looking at is that what we have is John Winter and Larry Alwyn, and the winner is Winter with 77% of the votes. In Thermopolis, we did have a 91% voter turnout. People were very interested in the local politics. That's why I was mentioning the county commissioner's race. And just for them to know that Bob Aguiar, who's of the Freedom Caucus, is the one that won here instead of Jack Baird, who is the independent.
Okay.
And so that's what we're reporting we have here.
All right. Thank you so much for that report from Thermopolis and Hot Springs County. So it's been so good to have just these few reports come in. We just haven't had that many of them. The polls have been so busy, and the poll workers, the election workers like Susan Stubson that we had on earlier, have just been so swamped. And we're grateful for all of those people who are volunteers as well as paid staffers on that one. And Claire is coming back to us as well. Claire, what do you have to report?
Oh, I just thought I would pile on here with Jackie because she was talking about Representative Winter's race. And since I have just a sliver of that, I'd say, nothing from Fremont County is going to undo what Jackie just reported. He's winning 82.22% of his small voter population here. That's all.
All right. Very good. Thank you both so much. Appreciate your input on that and look forward to more continued results. Keep getting sidetracked, but that's the way this works, right? I want to go back to the idea of energy, and which is truly Wyoming's lifeblood, and what a Trump presidency means to that if Donald Trump were to win tonight. And Paul Ulrich in the energy field, literally in the energy fields. Paul, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Wendy, thank you. And I'm glad we came back to this, but I really enjoyed the discussion the last 20, 30 minutes and appreciate all the panelists. That was very interesting. Rod, in particular, on something I didn't know regarding Wyoming's primaries, that they're not embedded in the Constitution. That's fascinating to me. Regarding a possible Trump win and what it means to Wyoming and certainly the energy industry, it is significant to say the least. Actions that have been put in place, in particular, the coal moratorium, which Harriet mentioned, the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan, which is due to be finalized here very soon. The governor just finished up his consistency review. We're still waiting on the Sage Grouse Resource Management Plan amendments that could have further significant negative impact on the industry. Wendy, you get the point. Yes. That's the high priority list of items. A Trump presidency can do a lot to roll a lot of that back, and also give us opportunity to reach out to additional markets, which I mentioned earlier. And I think more importantly, in partnership with the Trump win tonight, if that does happen, is Senator Barrasso and his leadership role and Harriet's leadership role, depending on what happens in the Senate and the House. Senator Barrasso has been a champion of permitting reform the last year, and I know Congresswoman Hageman is very supportive of deep and meaningful NEPA and permitting reform. We get some movement on that front, and that could be quite significant for Wyoming.
Very good. Thank you very much. I want to real quickly go to Bill Sniffen and talk real quickly about what he has been seeing in tonight, his observations from tonight, from that kind of overarching journalistic perspective, and the years that you've spent watching these elections, and the shift we've now seen completely away from, in so many ways, Democratic candidates in the Wyoming legislature and Democratic presence in the Wyoming legislature. We've got so many Republicans that are winning these general elections. Bill, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it has been a sea change. I mean, I do, again, like I comment about, I've been around a long time. Several of the other members of the panel have been around a while too. It is a totally different animal. I would certainly be against an open primary. I think what we have is what we have, and I think we've evolved into that. I wanted to just take about 30 seconds here and share with, I don't know how big an audience we have out there, but this statewide forum we're having right now was a dream that Jimmy and I talked about 4 years ago, when we had 800 subscribers, and we now have 85,000 daily subscribers. That's 100 times, and it grows in 4 years. And we've got, what, 125,000 Facebook followers.
150,000 now.
150,000. I mean, it's just gigantic. We are truly become the statewide news force. And I just want to tip my hat to Jimmy and for having the vision to make this happen. He was always the secret sauce that made it happen. And Wendy, good job. And all of you folks, this is just a great honor for me to be on here with you. But this is the type of thing that we envisioned a long time ago, and that is providing the people of Wyoming with a true statewide media. And I think we're getting there.
I think we're darn close. We are 4 minutes from 10
Hey,
o'clock.
Bill,
go
hey,
ahead,
Bill,
Jimmy.
I just want to mention, I think I'm going to win your poll.
You know, I think you might.
Yeah, it's looking like I will right now. Bill, the New York Times
Recount
is giving Donald Trump a 90% chance of victory, and they're estimating 301 electoral votes.
Oh, I owe you an extra large Dairy Queen Blizzard, and I'm going to be very happy to buy that for you.
So, well, I want to go ahead and sadly bring this evening to a close so that we all can go about the rest of our evenings. And some people go to bed and some people still have news to write. So I wanted to thank each and every one of you for being a part of our panel. On one hand, I wish that we had more time so that we could have had more thoughts from each of you, but I'm grateful, and I know all of us are, that all of you were able to give some of your insights into tonight's events and into everything that's led up to tonight's events. So Tom Lubnow, Rod Miller, Rob Wallace, Bill Sniffen, Liz Brimmer, Paul Ulrich, Cassie Craven, thank you for being a part of what we do, for being a part of this conversation, and for being open to having these conversations, because that's what truly makes Wyoming a great state, is that you can disagree, like Mike Sullivan and Bill Sniffen, and say, let's go, I'm going to go buy you a beer. That's the whole idea. And so we are grateful to have all of you with us today. And Jimmy Orr, I want to toss it over to you to wrap things up. Any final comments?
Well, I know, I don't know how late we're going to be working, because we're still waiting for a lot of results to come in. Everybody is, we've got an internal messaging system we use called Slack, and so we see that everybody's still writing. So yeah, we're just going to hang around until the stories are done. And then we look forward to having a Rod Miller column who will talk about this election. And then we'll see Cassie disagree with everything Rod says. So that'll be fun. What we do on Monday for the Monday newsletter is Cassie and Rod. We publish Cassie and Rod on the same day, and we do that on purpose because they have different views, but they're both really good writers and they get along personally. So it'll be fun to see their thoughts after this. And no, it was a great night. It was really good. We could keep going, but why don't we do this, Wendy? Why don't we just focus the camera on Paul, and Paul can just talk for the next hour.
Paul, what do you think about
that? Can I pass that obligation to Rob Wallace by chance?
I pass it to Jimmy Orr.
Yeah. We'll give it to Tom. Tom was a Speaker of the House. He knows how to speak.
There we go. Well, I'm going to take it back, and I'm going to go ahead and say it's 9:59, and we're going to go ahead and sign off for tonight. But thank you all for being a part of this. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. And Cowboy State Daily will have all of the information that we can possibly have for you at our newsletter that comes out at 5:15 a.m. if you are that kind of person and want to get up that early and read first thing what we've all gleaned from our wonderful stable of reporters over the past evening. So thank you all. Thanks for being part of the process. Thanks for being part of the event.
Everybody.
Folks,
thank you
so much for tuning in.
Nice work, Wendy. Nice work, Jimmy.
All right. Take care.